Hello there, everyone. So today we are talking about how to know if a food is healthy or not. So this was a big hit with my group program, and I thought I would share it with you guys as well as a thank you for being on my email list. So let's dig into it. Let's see, let's make my head a little bit smaller. There we go. So my goal with this particular presentation is to educate you without guilt or anxiety around food. A lot of times programs will say like, this is the list of good foods, this is the list of bad foods. That's not what I want to promote here. There's a little bit more nuance to it. And I think a lot of people shy away from that because they don't want to have to think, they don't want to have to learn a ton about nutrition. And you don't need to learn a lot about nutrition, but if you learn some basics, it will serve you really, really well because food in its inherent natural state doesn't change a lot. So if we learn some grounding principles, you'll go really, really far, I promise. So the other thing, I want you to be able to move towards a healthy lifestyle where you have food freedom and good health. You can absolutely have both. You don't have to be obsessed about your food and nutrition to be healthy. And likewise, we don't need to jump off the rails if we don't want to learn anything about nutrition. There is a balance you can find, and I'm very passionate about helping people find that particular balance instead of trying to fit themselves into a particular diet or lifestyle. So let's see. So this is basically what we're going to go over, but this is how we determine if a food or meal is healthy for you, because there's and these will be just basically a list of questions to help you arrive at the right destination for you in that situation. So one, we're going to cover the criteria that I do not use, and this might be very different to what you see on social media. So hang tight for that one. And then science-wise, so the scientific facts, which is what should ground nutrition advice, not personal opinions. It should be grounded in science of what is healthy for most humans as far as physiology and what works well for our bodies, and then also what is healthy for us mindset wise, because I think you can quite often have the quote perfect diet by a lot of textbook standards, but if you're not thinking positively about food, we can talk about how that can become an unhealthy relationship or choice as well. And then at the very end are the legitimate ingredients and foods that I would reduce or avoid potentially, and why. So let's go on. So criteria I don't use. Number of calories for one. A food can be just really naturally higher in calories, and that has no indication of its health benefits whatsoever. Number of ingredients. This is my favorite one because you see it all over social media. Like, this is a really processed food because it has a ton of ingredients. Is that a trend? Yes. Could it be a correlation? Potentially. But for me, if I made a homemade smoothie and put it in a bottle and has more than 50 ingredients on it and 50 types of fruit, does that make it inherently unhealthy? No, it doesn't. So this one I don't really use too much. Again, I want people to think a little bit more critically. We are smart, intelligent people. I believe that. I want to empower people to believe that as well. And I don't think this is a very helpful metric. Number 3, the pronunciation of ingredients. Just because I don't know a word, I'm not great at reading, to be honest. And just because I don't know a word doesn't mean it's inherently bad. So I would love to break that myth as well. And also, if you read a supplement, a health supplement, a multivitamin perhaps, that said pantothenic acid, and you're like, I don't know what pantothenic acid is, it's probably not healthy for me. I can't pronounce it, or I don't know where it comes from. It's a essential vitamin that we need to survive. So that one doesn't really work very well either. So health labels, as helpful or healthful as this might sound, they're not terribly helpful. Unless you're trying to avoid something like gluten. And so if it's labeled gluten-free, that is a helpful label for you. If you are plant-based or vegan and it says vegan, that's a healthful label for you. And then if it's low fat, that might indicate it's a lower fat, has lower fat content for each serving. Again, it's really only if you're interested in that particular feature. And again, I don't think they're terribly helpful. The regulation of different food labels varies a lot country to country. So again, not terribly helpful versus if we can look at the nutrition facts and we know a little bit about food, I can get a better idea of if this food fits well with what I'm trying to do or how I'm trying to fuel my body. And then lastly, hopefully this is obvious, but if it's endorsed by any particular influencers, spokespersons, if they're paid to advertise it, obviously there's a little bit conflicting reasons in there as well. Fun fact, when you read scientific literature, you're supposed to declare whether you have a vested interest or conflict of interest in this particular study outcome. Maybe we should do that with those types of food advertisements or product advertisements. It would probably be very illuminating. Also fairly obvious if someone's doing a paid ad, they're probably getting paid to do that. All right, so what is healthy science-wise? So if you just know the science of food, the chemistry on how food is made, the physiology of how a human body works, how do I determine if something's healthy or not? So these are some simple questions that I ask to help clients realize that, because quite often they'll say, hey, is this healthy? Hey, is this healthy? And those are really good questions, but at the end of the day, someone's not going to work with me forever. So when they leave their time working with me, I want them to be able to answer these questions on their own. So I usually ask them this. So if they say, hey, is this healthy or is it not? First question, are you allergic to it? Seems obvious, but they're probably not if they're considering eating it. But great. So if you're not allergic to it, it's probably, that's not, we're at least avoiding that terrible situation, right? So we can move on to question number 2. Are you intolerant to it? So this is not an outright allergic reaction, but sometimes foods can cause delayed side effects, like might cause gas and bloating later. It might cause some brain fog, or generally we can class this as I just don't feel great eating this. I might not know exactly why, but when I eat this food a little while later, next day, even up to 3 days later, I just don't feel as good. So if that is true for you and this food and you're not okay with it, I would probably give it a pass. It might not be the most health promoting or might not make you feel great. So I would probably give it a pass. And then a little bit more detailed with that one, with number 3, will it make me feel bad physically, mentally, or emotionally? And I do mean mentally and emotionally, because quite often, and this for me personally, and a lot of clients find this as well after we've been working together for a while, is that some high carbohydrate foods, call them treats, sugar, desserts, whatever, they don't make me feel great mentally. My body might be able to handle it physically, I'm not going to gain weight, I'm not going to, instantly start bloating or something like that, but mentally it just doesn't make me feel as good. Emotionally, it might make me a little bit more moody, it might bring some anxiety up, things like that. And as you progress in your health journey, if that's true for you, you don't have to have that. If I don't want to sign up for anxiety this afternoon, and I know that food causes anxiety for me, maybe I'll pass. Maybe that's not okay. It doesn't fit in with my day today, so I'm going to give it a pass. And then, is it whole food? This was a little bit of a slippery slope, because some people will say, even if it's in a wrapper or just moderately processed foods, people will be like, oh, it's not whole food, it's processed. Yes, I guess not terribly wrong. For me, I want people to just know what they're eating. So can you picture the ingredients in their original form? Did it come from, was it grown in the soil? Was it picked from a plant? Was it formerly an animal product? Something like that. So if something's highly, highly processed, it might have some preservation methods, which again aren't inherently bad. It's good that we know how to preserve our food to a good degree. It keeps us safe. It prevents food poisoning. There's lots of good values in there. But say, for example, ultra processed food. So McDonald's or those fast food type things, or Twinkies or highly processed things, they've just been processed a lot. So in general, should we be having those all the time? Maybe not. Am I saying never have these? Absolutely not. But health-wise, these are some questions that you can kind of ask, and mostly just to determine the frequency in which you eat those things. But again, I would circle back to the first ones. If I don't feel physically, mentally, or emotionally good eating that food, and I don't want to feel that certain way, I don't have to eat it. And then the last one. So do the macronutrients or facts about the food fit my needs? Again, this is to you. So if there's a very active person and they require a lot of carbohydrates to maintain their activity level, their training level, maybe they're an athlete, a high carbohydrate food, such as something that has, a lot of sugar in it, so to speak, might be very helpful for them. It might fuel their workout, which is really good. Now, another person, it might not fit their needs. Maybe they're pre-diabetic, maybe they're type 2 diabetic, and they don't need that much sugar in that particular serving, in that particular food. So it might not fit their needs. So if we learn the basic facts about food, we start to read labels on the back of our foods, maybe track our food a little bit so we just learn about what food is made out of, we can stop using the words of this is a good food, this is a bad food, versus this doesn't really fit my needs right now. Is white rice that much better than brown rice? One has slightly more fiber than the other. Maybe if I really enjoy white rice, even though it has a little bit less fiber, maybe it spikes my blood sugar a little bit more, but maybe I'll just have vegetables before I eat the rice and a smaller portion of rice. And then I can enjoy the food that I really like, because I don't really like brown rice. And then that way I can make that modification. Again, this might seem like a lot of things that hey, I didn't know to do that. This is the value of working with a professional and learning those nuances, but the nuances that are relevant to your particular situation, your lifestyle, the foods you like to eat, things like that. So this seems like a lot. You do learn a lot by working with a professional as far as nutrition, and it saves you a lot of time as far as what you have to know and what you don't have to worry about learning. So, but ask yourself, does this, just the nutrition facts of food, fit in with what I'm trying to do? Whether that's cut calories, increase calories to gain muscle mass, increase my protein intake, moderate my carbs, whichever of those. Just learn a little bit about food and see if it fits. Mindset wise, so this is a really something I really like to talk about with clients, because I think it's no good eating a perfect diet if you overeat on the perfect diet. It's still not healthy mentally. So to the first question, will it make me feel physically or mentally, emotionally well? And sometimes the answer, even if I won't feel like I know the side effects of eating a certain food, say brownies, cake, whatever high sugar thing that I mentioned earlier gives me a little bit more anxiety, just seems to make my mood not quite as stable. Some days that's worth it. Some days it's not. So asking yourself, am I okay with that? On a day where I have like a presentation or something really important that day that I really want to, perform well for, maybe I'm not okay with those particular side effects that day. Now, my birthday, on the other hand, maybe I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that situation and the quote side effects of that particular food. So I'm not going to worry about it that day, and maybe I'll say yes to it. Question number 2, does this choice align with my rest of my day? Only you can answer that. Does this choice align with my goals for the week, the month, the person I'm becoming? And this is mostly to help you kind of circle down to this 5th question actually here, is this becoming a common occurrence, and how frequently am I doing this? So if I'm asking myself this question all the time, like, does this choice align with my day? Yes, it does align with my day today. And you're saying that every day, the frequency is probably off. So this is just to help you develop more of an eye for creating that long-term goal and bringing that into reality and really trying to become that other person. So if you're trying to become that gym rat that loves going to the gym and eats healthy and like builds muscle and things like that, like let's keep that in mind of the big picture you're trying to achieve on this daily basis, so we don't get caught in the weeds of what feels good in the here and now in just this particular moment. So number 4, is this a special event, and what value does this choice or experience provide? Is this food critical to the present experience? So this comes up a lot with clients, because they're like, well, my friend was in town and so we had to go out to eat and I had to have 5 beers, and that meant I had to order the biggest thing on the menu or whatever it is, or insert your situation there. And I always just like to play not necessarily devil's advocate, but just be curious, because I think a lot of those valuable and really memorable moments, it's not necessarily about the food. Like if my best friend comes to town, like, yeah, I want to go out to a nice restaurant or some food that we're going to enjoy. But the critical value of that particular special event is my best friend coming into town. It's not necessarily whether we have pizza, whether we have burgers, whether we have a salad. We could go for a walk in the park. We could do so many different things. That's not the core element and most important thing about that experience. So just try to reframe and ask yourself if the food is not the most critical, important part, and then don't worry about it. Let it fall to the background. You can eat something that's just, regular, that again makes you feel mentally, physically, and emotionally well. And then let that other experience really just hang on the most important part, which is usually the people. So food for thought for that one. That's one of my favorite questions. And quite often you can ask this one in retrospect. So if I have a client that's going out of town or one of these special events is coming up, I'm like, hey, this is ahead of time. What do you want out of the experience? Before we're hungry, before we're in the moment, before other peer pressures come into it, what would you love to get out of the experience? And then they can tell me. They're like, I want to go on vacation. I want to enjoy different food. I don't want to track my food, but I don't want to binge eat. I don't want to overeat, something along those lines. Cool. Let's do that. And then we'll talk about how to make that an actual reality. But then they defined it, and we don't have to feel like we failed because we didn't track our food because that wasn't our goal, and things like that. We weren't going to eat perfect. That wasn't our goal. So we don't need to feel bad about that. We execute the thing that is most important to us. And fun fact, that's usually the most important thing, is just not to go overboard. We're trying to maintain some level of, I don't want to say mediocrity, but medium level of like our habits. So that's really, really important to ask yourself ahead of time. Really good question to ask. What do you want out of it? And then the last one, is this choice becoming routine occurrence? Am I okay with this frequency, or do I need to reduce it? So this just comes up when you have a lot of people coming to town. Maybe it's birthday, maybe it's the holidays, and holidays are a great example, right? If you have a significant other and you end up having like 5 Christmas celebrations or 5 Thanksgivings or Friendsgivings or whatever it is, this is a really great question to ask, because obviously the frequency of that particular scenario is coming up quite often. So it's like, hey, what do I really value out of all of those? So maybe it's, not having pie or not having cake at every single one, especially if you're hitting like multiple in a day. Maybe that's too much to make me, not feel physically, mentally, and emotionally well. So always circle back to those ones. And this is just to catch that those things that we want to keep on an infrequent basis aren't becoming routine or automatic. I want these things to be conscious choices. And it's fine when we have them, because again, we have these set of questions to really determine, is this what I want in this particular moment? But this is really important just to make sure that those things aren't becoming absolute routine and not like brushing our teeth, because we do want some choice in the matter. That's the key. All right, so these are the things and reasons why I avoid particular foods. So number 1, fried foods and poor quality oils. I say poor quality oils because these are oils that just don't chemically work well when they're heated. Just from their chemical structure, when heat is added to the equation, they tend to get damaged, they tend to go rancid very quickly, and they aren't health promoting once we consume them when in their damaged state. So that's like simple, not charged, not, I guess, an opinion too much. It's rooted pretty much in scientific fact. And these are things like canola oil, soybean oil, peanut, corn, vegetable oil blends. Heat is usually used to process them. Sometimes they'll have deodorizers or ways to stabilize their color, so we don't necessarily smell that they're going rancid. Nowadays they do have some cold expressed. So if it says cold expeller expressed oil, they didn't use heat to express it, so that's good. But I still don't want to expose these oils to extreme heats. So if you use them cold on a salad, that could be a good option, but I wouldn't want to use these oils to fry in, and quite often they are, because they are cheaper oils. So that's the reason I try to limit those. Again, do I love fries? Do I love sweet potato fries? Occasionally fried food tastes delicious. Absolutely. Are there ways that we can get around this? Yeah, using an air fryer at home or just limiting the amount of it. Those are things that I'm usually fine with. If we're out and about and fried food sounds good and I had some, I'm not going to worry about it. I don't do that too often. Am I okay with maybe feeling a little bit more bloated or a little gut upset later? I'll have to make that decision in that moment. But for that reason, that's why I avoid those particular fried foods or oils. And then number 2, ultra processed. And I do mean ultra processed. I mean, processed food, you could say, is anything in a wrapper. You could say that's a protein bar or protein shake. And I still think those things can be helpful. You could say that's a cucumber in a wrapper because it's processed, it's packaged, so to speak. So I do mean ultra processed foods, junk foods, things are high in sugar. And I mostly put this in here because if we go back to our earlier questions of like, does that make me feel physically and emotionally well? Those foods do not. At this point. And sometimes that takes a while to eat relatively well, mostly whole foods. And then we'll start to realize that those ultra processed foods don't make us feel very good. And that's mostly why that's on that list. So sugar alcohols, some people are sensitive to those, some aren't. If you have bloating and you're eating really well and you think I'm eating all these whole foods, sometimes it's the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts that are causing some of that bloating. If you've just increased your intake of vegetables, that could cause the bloating as well. But if you're also eating a lot of foods or beverages that have these sugar alcohols, these are the most common ones: erythritol, xylitol, sorbitol, mannitol, maltinol, isomalt, things like that. These ones you don't see quite as often. But if you see those, they're also in chewing gum. And this way it allows manufacturers to put sugar-free on it because they're sugar alcohols, and they're usually lower calorie or sugar-free products. So helpful in that respect, and can be helpful for weight loss. Some people find that they're really sensitive to them. So for those people, I say just be aware of them and avoid them if you need to. It's not everybody, so it's not something I would sweat a bunch about. And then if something is more than 50 to 75% of either my carbohydrate budget or fat budget, and I say budget, so this is really if I have a weight loss specific goal. If you are tracking macros and you have very specific numbers, if one particular food, one serving of it or one portion, meal, whatever, is more than 50, 75% of that specific budget, then I might hesitate a little bit because I'm like, well, that's a lot to spend on one particular item per se, right? Or meal. So if that's the case, then I might, modify the portion size or something like that. So this is just encouraging us to be conscious of portions, basically. Alcohol, very little benefits. It increases your risk for multiple types of cancer, so not a ton of health benefits, and I don't see a lot of benefit of consuming it. Fun fact though, if you look at blue zones, and blue zones are places around the world that have centenarians, so people that live in their community to over 100, up to 100 or over 100 years old, alcohol is still consumed in their cultures. And I think this important little note is not that it necessarily has health benefits, but that the community aspect is like any time that they're drinking alcohol, it's usually in a community setting. So I think that is also an important part. It's also consumed usually in moderation as well, in conjunction with a bunch of other health promoting factors like movement every day, generally a good diet, etc. So for me, I don't think alcohol is terribly helpful as a health sense, but I will put that just a little point in there again to probably play devil's advocate against or in that scenario. All right, so is it healthy? Peanuts can be totally high in protein, high plant protein source, has other nutrients. If I'm allergic, it is not a healthy food for me. If I have intolerance to it, it's not a healthy food for me. Broccoli, generally pretty healthy, can cause gas and bloating. So if I don't want gas and bloating that particular day, maybe I don't eat a ton of broccoli. Maybe I moderate the portion of it. Eggs, incredibly healthy, nutrient-dense food. Also a common allergen and food that people are intolerant to. So yes and no. Shellfish, common allergy, also very nutrient dense. You got to decide for yourself. Avocados, very nutrient dense, great healthy fat. Also, some people are allergic to them. Coffee, some people love it. Myself, I love the smell of it, but it gives me heartburn, so I don't enjoy it. I find other forms of caffeine to enjoy. Smoothie can be really healthy. Can have a lot of ingredients, guys. So many ingredients. Could also be low protein. I see a lot of people making low protein smoothies, and this could be a big carb hit. And maybe that's not what someone needs, especially if they're watching their sugar consumption or they're watching their blood sugar. It might not be a great mix. So need a little more details there. Fruit juice, again, if they're watching their blood sugars, that might not be a good option. If you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, this is something I would be cautious of as well. Again, just from the high fructose consumption, might not be helpful for the liver in that particular situation. And then a gluten-free donut. It's gluten-free, so if gluten-free is what you need, this could be a good option for you in a social situation, or if you need a sweet treat, that could be a great option. Otherwise, it might not fit well in your day. So dairy-free cheese, if dairy's not a good option or combination for you, this could be a good option. It could also still cause gas and bloating, even the dairy-free ones. It might not be dairy that's the problem. It could be another ingredient. So maybe this is helpful for you. Maybe it's not. Cookies. I would argue if my grandma's coming over and it's a really, I don't get to see her that often and she wants to make cookies, I would argue that having some cookies and baking some cookies with my grandma, this very not frequent occurrence, I would argue that's potentially a very healthy scenario to enjoy that, to create memories, etc. So, and similar for cake. Cake on just a random Tuesday might not be that special. Cake on my birthday, probably pretty special. So depends on the scenario there. Same thing for sugar cookies, chocolate. You can decide whether that is healthy for you or not. All right, so these are some more examples of healthy, non-healthy food. I kind of created a spectrum over here. So this is probably the more processed stuff I would limit, not necessarily completely exclude. Some things in the middle here. Bacon, not usually health promoting. I don't think it's as bad as most people think it is, unless you're having it every day, all day. Milk, eggs, these some kind of borderline ones, depending on the person in the middle here. And then generally the stuff off to the left, whole food, simple stuff. But it's all on a spectrum, so don't think that there are hard and fast rules to this stuff. All right, so lastly, I would love for you guys to help me out and let me know what you think. So comment below. Does this change how you think about healthy food? Let me know your thoughts. Comment below if you have any other questions or things you want me to cover in a video. Comment below. And the only other thing I got for you is if you want to subscribe to the email list and you haven't already, go ahead and do that at parksidenutrition.com/subscribe and subscribe there and to the YouTube channel as well. Otherwise, have a fantastic day.